What's up, buddy?
Hey, man, how are you?
I can't complain. It's a little chilly here, but things are going well.
It's chilly everywhere.
Ooh.
It's chilly everywhere. Yeah.
You fighting it?
Don't. Yeah, dude, I'm fighting it for real. Hayden gave both Allie and I a little bit of the junk from the hospital, and so we're trying to get back and ready to roll for the work week.
Oh, man. Well, it's a good thing we're about 1,000 miles away and I can't catch it from you. Because I'm still...
Yeah, I definitely would have passed it along right there.
I mean, everybody's messing with this right now. And I'm in and out, man. I was over it. Now I'm kind of like, still on the fence.
Right now I'm currently straddling that fence of, I'm probably about out of the woods, or should I go ahead and, like, bail and take some medication? I'm like right there. And I'm like, I'll just wait till tomorrow. And then I'll wait till tomorrow. But, you know, I'm feeling pretty okay, so I'm just gonna keep on trucking.
Well, I mean, if you believe in medication, you should probably take it right now.
I'm gonna keep sipping this emergency and getting on with my life.
Okay, I like it. Speaking of getting on with my life, I guess that's what happened to me a while back, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I realize this is not a unique experience, and a lot of people have kind of gone from being a lazy ass and then turned their life around and done an Ironman. But I think it's kind of cool to go back and revisit and see what it took and where I came from, and especially since you were my coach the whole time and leading me up to my first Ironman race. And I don't know if you remember back that far, but it was in 2012 actually when we first started talking.
Oh, I remember. I remember a bit. Remember, I had to remind you of the first day we met at the Calypso Cafe in East Nashville.
That's right. Yeah, I pulled in my leather
jacket on your Harley, and I was like, dude, I'm screwed. I was like, here comes a coaching resume ruiner if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, right. Honestly, is that how you were feeling? You're like, oh man, what is this dude doing? Because that was literally the first time we met, blind.
I know, yeah, blind. Yeah, it was our coach athlete blind date before the rest of the guys got there. No, I tried not to be, judgmental, but I was.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, this guy's old. And he kind of looks like, no, you don't even look half of 60. I was like, man, this guy looks like he's definitely like a midlife crisis. But this is going to be difficult, but we can definitely make it work.
Yeah, and at the time, I think I was 49, and I was going to be racing my first Ironman at 50, and I think you knew that part, or maybe not. But
yeah, I did. I knew that. Yeah.
Were you used to training old men at that time, or did you have usually? Young?
I've had some late 50s to even. I think 63 is the oldest athlete that I've coached. I coached a guy to 70.3 worlds who was 61.
Oh, that's nice. So at the time, I had just started my running career about 6 months earlier, and I had done a half marathon at the time, so you knew that much. My cycling background was I had some mountain biking history, but that was like 25 years earlier. So, but as it turned out, that was it still translated a little bit. But other than that, the pool was virtually nothing for me. I think I had done a Olympic at the time actually, because I started running in April of that year or March, and by the end of the summer I had gone to watch Ironman Louisville. Then I did a awful Olympic where I swam like 43 minutes and a lot of it breaststroke, and then signed up for Ironman Wisconsin, and that's when we met.
That gives me that's a background I already knew. But so we pretty much met that first week of January, and so we had basically 9 months. Mm-hmm. And so I think it'd be good for the listeners to know at that point, like that week, what were you capable of doing, or what had you done relatively, from a training standpoint, like the month before? Like, yeah, you had some mountain biking experience, and that's like, I rode a bike when I was young. Yours translated more from an approach and a handling aspect. I think that translated a lot quicker, which made you more comfortable.
Yeah.
Most people are that's a big limiter for a lot of people, is their bike handling and their fear of doing things. That wasn't an issue with you, so I think that helped you tremendously. But from a running background, I mean, you had just done, like, you had gone couch to 5K. How long before we met?
Oh, well, that was the 2012, and I think we met that fall. So maybe 6-7 months. I had gone couch to 5K, and then I met you, and then we didn't.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're couch to Ironman in like a little over a year and a half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that gives our listeners a good context of background. And swim wise, and a 43-minute Olympic swim or 45-minute Olympic swim.
Yeah, it's like 43.
Yeah. Which isn't. Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah. Well, it was saddled with holding kayaks and anxiety and a lot of breaststroking and that sort of thing. So it was definitely not a swim per se. So anyway,
right, you participated in the swim leg.
Correct.
Right, and it took you 43 minutes. Got it. Okay, yeah. I mean, at that point, I was probably training close to 20 to 30 athletes at the time, most for the Ironman distance. But and we're going to focus kind of on not just the age aspect, because I think while that's important, it's also an important area for us to touch on, like the sedentary aspect.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the place where you came from, and most people latch on to, an Ironman, I think, and this is kind of a topic I think we'll touch on another podcast, but it's if you're gonna dangle a carrot, it's much more tantalizing and much easier to get motivated for a bigger carrot. I don't necessarily advise jumping, from Olympic to, a full Ironman. I don't think most people would, or even a couch to full. I think it takes, you definitely would need to be coached, just because you don't know enough, and you could have a bad experience. But the older you get, there are more questions that pop up. Your body allegedly can't be as durable. It can't be as resilient. You can't do as much high intensity stuff. Right about now, there's a book out that's just now becoming really, really popular. It's Joe Friel's Fast After 50 book. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of titled like How to Race Strong for the Rest of Your Life. He touches on this. He touches on, I think in chapter 5, I'm just glancing through some of the notes. It's on training basics, and it talks about, does intensity have downsides? Mm-hmm. Well, sure it does. But the thing is that most people get too excited and they overtrain, and they want to race hard and they want to train hard too often and too much. You still need to do intensity as you get older, and we'll touch on that as we talk about your training progression. But that was when I took pen to paper when plotting a course for you from January to September. That was one of the areas that I knew would have to be monitored very closely and regulated to kind of keep you healthy for the whole duration.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because I figured that out quickly. That I was luckily to have 4 other guys that we were training with, and a couple of them had done Ironman. So I was, how you get so excited about it, and firsthand how many questions I had, and I think that was one of the things that in some ways you kind of. I think I pushed you so much with the questions, and I don't think you really had to worry about me going too far and too hard, because that was I was listening to my body the whole time, and I was questioning sometimes if I had the ability to bounce back, and when I couldn't, I was the first guy to rest. And I know a lot of people get caught up in this whole idea, if they miss one workout, they're screwed, and I tried not to let that get to me. I tried to make sure that I was recovered, and we would talk a lot about modifying some things, and you were real good about listening to me say, hey man, I just can't do these sorts of things, and we adjusted along the way. Yeah,
the no matter what age you get into the sport, your initial approach should always have should always have the, you should always frame it in I want this to be sustainable. And I want to be able to do it for a long period of time. And you see so many athletes, whether it's with a coach, without a coach, whether it's a newbie or an older athlete who's been doing the sport for a long time, they just get so burnt out. And I talk about one of the things that I really, really pride myself on as a coach is keeping my athletes injury free. And then another one that is probably almost, it's not more important, but I guess in a different area, is all of my athletes, predominantly most of them, the week after they do an Ironman are ready to go again. Well, they're ready to start training again. They're ready to keep training. And for me, that goes back to an initial conversation I had with people, and I think I probably had this with you too, was that more people get emotionally and mentally burnt out training for an Ironman before they burn out physically. I remember, and you probably remember this too, but when I surprised you guys with your hardest week.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
The week off, right? Is that what you're talking about?
You're exactly right. Yeah.
It came out of nowhere too. It
came out of nowhere.
It was like the reverse of Hell Week.
It was the reverse of Hell Week, but you guys had done January, February, March, April. Hard training. Nobody was racing soon, and it kind of gives you a chance to kind of split the year into halves, and I gave you guys a week off. If you wanted to keep moving. Most of you did. But keep everything under an hour and keep it all easy. And that was more so for your mind than it was anything else, because it almost resets you for the whole year, because you were like, all right, now let's get into training. And you only got 3 or 4 months to go, but that's little pieces that are really important, no matter how old the athlete is just sustainability and monitoring them, mentally, emotionally, physically.
So yeah, we started in January, and 9 months later, roughly, I was set to do Ironman Wisconsin. At that time, I'd done the half marathon. I couldn't swim. I did that 43-minute Olympic. I was kind of dabbling around even a little bit at that time. I didn't go any further. And my bike, I did that Olympic, I think it was 27 miles or something like that. And I don't know if I had ridden much further than that at that point. That was kind of like, I'm going to go for it. I was used to mountain biking, and I kind of felt like 25 miles was about in my grasp, and that was about the extent of my real distance cycling at that point. And we met, and then we started in January. And what was your thought process at that point? I think base.
Yeah, it's definitely base stuff, but if you can do 25 miles, you can do that a couple times a week. And so a lot of people like to jump up in volume quickly when they should really just jump up in frequency. If you can cycle 25 miles, you can do that every other day, because it's so much easier to recuperate and recover cycling wise than it is running, just from a load standpoint. And so if you can ride one time at 25 miles, and you should be able to squeeze in 3 or 4 a week, and then you're starting to accumulate hours and volume. And then when your volume starts to get to a certain point, 4 or 5 hours a week, well, now we can maybe cut back from 4 rides to 3 rides and make 2 rides intensity and make your weekend ride a little bit longer. And there's so many ways to manipulate that in a positive way. And I think so many people just in the sport in general, and you and I talk about this all the time, is that they set themselves up with limits before they get started. I can only do this. I can only do that. I'm just not ready, or I can never. I'm like, listen, I tell people this all the time. Ironman, honestly, in my opinion, has nothing to do with athletic ability. 0. Yeah. It has to do with, if you want to do it, do you have the will to do it? Are you willing to make the sacrifice time-wise? And is it something that's important to you? And if you can check off the list of all 4 of those things, then I have no doubt, without a shadow, with no question, that anyone can do one, period. And so I think that I think for me, working with you, especially, was we don't want to limit what you can do just based on your experience. because the other guys had a lot more experience racing than you did. But I think a lot of it has to do with personality and just general athletic, not so much athletic ability, but an athletic mindset. If you grew up as an athlete in any shape or form, single sport, multiple sports, whatever, it gives you an invaluable experience when it comes to training for and having a mindset that puts you in a good, positive place to take on something such long term as this. And that's something I thought that you had in your back pocket ahead of the other guys. That is something that you can't necessarily teach, in my opinion, because at that point it was a little late in the game, and you either kind of have it or you don't, and you got to work with it no matter what.
I think that's I didn't realize it at the time, and my athletic background was basically baseball, a little bit of basketball, and some hockey. And I kept coming back to this, the baseball and getting off the bench at late in the game of that second doubleheader. It was, my legs were always tired, and we just never really trained that hard back then, but it was always a mental game just to get up and run out to your position. And we did that so many times, and I did that so many times in my life, that was the biggest transferable skill that I think I learned in early sports, to translate to endurance, because it's just about turning your legs over one more time, and it's so mental in that regard.
The other biggest thing is gradually educating a newer athlete, because I rarely get athletes that are so new to the sport but also taking on the ultimate kind of pinnacle of the sport. There's no kind of trial by fire. There's no year of me kind of educating you on nutrition and pacing and the huge leap from an Olympic to a full and wanting to execute. There's a lot, like you said, there's a million questions on terminology, on why am I this. There's no I would have been
lost, dude. I was lost.
Yeah, and just from, that was kind of another thing. It was like, we need to kind of sometimes I think you can over prepare athletes. And what I mean by that is you can give them so much information that it becomes so many questions and so much misinformation and confusion that the whole purpose kind of gets lost. And that's the main reason why some of your biggest workouts were spontaneous. Because a lot of times for athletes of any sport and of any age, it's getting out of the way of your own mind that sets you up for the ultimate success. Because people will talk themselves out of doing almost anything, whether it's going to the store when it's cold outside, or I'll just do it tomorrow, or I'll start working out and eating healthy on Monday. If every day of the week was called Monday, everybody would be in ridiculous shape. For you are a big thinker. You like to think a lot. You like to analyze in your head. All right, now is this going to be good for me? It's not. So for you, it couldn't be like, all right, I'm going to make you do this. If I'd have told you were doing a 120-mile ride on Saturday on the Natchez Trace with like 7,000 feet of elevation, you would have had like, all right, are you sure you want me to do this? Or I don't know if I can do this or not. Or don't you think it's a little bit much?
I would have overslept, dude.
You probably would have overslept.
And caught up to later and rode about half.
Yeah, caught up later and rode about half. But I caught you when you were kind of doing 60, or thought so. And I was like, all right, let's go ahead and bump that. And that's kind of one of those ways where, one of my phrases is always, you only have a couple matches to burn every year. And so many people want to burn so many matches. What I mean by burning matches is there's only so many hard efforts and days you have in you within a course of a calendar year, and that's just what I believe, and I believe it to be true because I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've done it to myself before. That's why so many people you see that PR their workouts absolutely suck in races, and why so many people need to slow down and take things more seriously and approach it differently from a process standpoint rather than trying to win every day when you can only really win a few times a year. For you, that was a day where we wanted to strike the match, not necessarily burn it. And for you, it's just as mental as it is physical, because I wanted to strike it so you could see how big the flame could be.
Yeah.
That way, when you needed it and you thought about it come race day, you're like, dude, like for me, before I do any race, I look back through my training journal. I'm like, man, I remember doing that, and I felt crappy, and it was a long week, and I was already fatigued, and I just did 120 miles with this elevation and was still churning the next day. I'm pretty sure I can handle this. And so for you, it was that, these spontaneous, I think it was a lighting of an internal fire. We had you got a text ass kicking at one point, I believe, too. Rant, I think maybe in May or June, when you started to kind of lax off there a little bit. I think you got a little bit too big for your britches when it came to fulfilling your potential. But you kind of need those emotional, mental, physical strikes of the match to kind of keep everything in perspective, but also understand what you're capable of.
Yeah, and you did that to me along the way. I should mention that, before that big ride, I started, my first big ride was with Jim, and we went out, I think it was like a 60 or 70 mile brick. And that destroyed me so hard that I can't even tell you. It was the first outside ride of the year. We had been doing 3-hour spins inside and things like that with bricks. And when I got outside, just the whole idea of me being in the wind and everything like that. I mean, it was just, at that point, I really did not think I could make it. And it was probably April before the Ironman or something like that. And it was so hard for me to run 20 minutes off the bike at that point that I had no idea I could even pull this thing off. And then shortly thereafter, we started going to the lake, and I'd never worn a wetsuit before. And the first time I put on a wetsuit, it was really cold water that day, and just the whole feeling was just so new for me and freaky that, again, I was just like hitting these spots all the time. It was like every time I went out and did a workout, it seemed like it was a new personal record of sorts, because it was just this building all the time, every time we went out. And, that I can't remember exactly what we did that first day, but I know that you probably put us through a pretty decent little workout in the lake. And, man, it was just, I don't know. How do you talk to people their first time when they get in the lake and things like that? What do you think about it?
You really can't. I'll never forget. I don't think. Well, Teresa still might listen to this. I don't think you remember the very first day. We pulled up. I had never met her, and she had kind of learned about our open water swim clinics, and they were coming on, and I remember pulling in the parking lot, and she was in tears.
No way. Yeah, I can believe it.
First day.
I might have been.
First day. I mean, now and then she went on to just crush all of her swims, but totally in tears, literally terrified of just the thought of getting in the water. I
Is this wetsuit like early?
Yeah, this is wetsuit. And for me, I do have a very tender, gentle, soft side.
Oh yeah.
But this. But at the same time, that's not the part. That's not important to me at that point. It's you need to look in that person's eye and say, "I'm confident you can do this," because right now you're not confident you can. You don't need to come down and baby somebody. It's let's get in the water and let's do this. And there were days where she would leave crying or she would leave upset, and there would be days that she would leave, give me a hug and thank me for turning her into a good swimmer, and above all else, just being comfortable to do it. But I don't think that there's really anything you can prepare somebody for. That's when having somebody looking over you, no matter who it is, and having a still, calming force of, we're going to do this, we're all going to be okay, and we're all going to do well. Panic leads to panic. And then that's another reason why I don't like going to race expos, and I don't like going to pre-race dinners, and because I just believe anxiety and panic leads to anxiety and panic. And so as calm as you can be, the calmer you are, the better things always go. But anytime you throw anyone in that kind of an environment, whether it's somebody who hasn't swam open water like you, almost 50, to somebody coming against 20, it's a totally different sport. It's a totally different animal. You're going to learn and adapt and improve at such a rapid rate that there really is no point in like testing your swim times, because every day you come back, you're getting better. You're applying a new thing that you learned. You're applying a new method. You're applying a new mental strategy of being more confident, more calm, and all those things just pile and pile and pile to. You get to race day and you're like, this isn't even like half what we used to do at open water swims. This is like a joke. Where's the contact? Give me some.
Yeah. There was certainly that. I mean, as you know, I mean, anybody that has followed my blog for, especially that year, every other post was something to do with the mass start swim at Wisconsin. I was just so fascinated by it and intrigued and scared and, just amped. The whole thing about it, I kept watching videos and looking at things, and I was like, oh my, I just couldn't imagine myself being in the middle of that. But the way we trained at the lake with, 10 to 20 people at a time, and how you had us working on contact, and you'd set up drills specifically to cause log jams around buoys and things like that. I can't even tell you how, the contact and that sort of thing was the last worry I had in my mind that day. It was just more about, getting done. But I embraced and almost sought out contact. It was pretty weird, but so at that point, I guess there was a certain day at the lake when I all along the way, that cycling ride you talked about when you pushed me from 60 miles to over 100 in the day I didn't expect it. That was a breakthrough moment of confidence. That was a time when I knew that, okay, maybe I can do this. And same thing with swimming. I think it was maybe that day we swam out around the island, which was like it was probably a little over a mile or whatever, but it just seemed so monumental to me.
Oh, it's every bit of a mile.
Yeah.
It's probably a mile and a half, but it was, and that was a huge day for everybody. I mean, you went from trying to stay within the buoy line and maybe just staying within the boom to where you could stand to, swimming out in the wide open lake with no buoys and no protection.
Yeah, it wasn't probably the smartest idea, but
yeah, it wasn't. Well, we went early, and I was on, the paddleboard, and I would have, done my best to take one for the team, but, I probably wouldn't have. And it went there and went back, and it was. And that's what I love about sports, is that nobody even looked at their watch.
Mm-hmm.
It was just about completing the distance, because and I can think that's kind of the journey part of it too, is you walked up to the lake that first day we did it, and that island literally looks like 10 miles away.
Yeah, it does.
And you think, there is no way in hell I'm ever A, going to be able to swim to that, or B, going to want to.
Right.
And then it became, when am I going to swim to the island? All right, when am I going to swim to the island? And guys had to beg me. And so finally we went. But that was definitely, from a swimming standpoint, that was definitely one of your breakthroughs. And then again, it's coming in at different times when we do intervals at the lake, and beating somebody you hadn't beaten before, or it was such a competitive atmosphere with such contact that it just bred improvement. I mean, it just did. I mean, it was just everybody just gotten better and better every single day.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. And so when I think back to maybe so that's a swim and a cycling breakthrough. And I think you hit on a great point there about that progression. You just don't see it early enough, but it's kind of like stepping back and looking at everything, because you're just sort of in the grind, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're like, whoa, man, I can do this. We went out it was right before the Ironman Muncie 70.3, and you took us out to this track on a 100-degree day, and we went through that workout, which we've talked about on here before, but I don't think everybody listens to everything. But although today we are right up against NFL football and doing quite well, I might add.
Yeah, well, we are.
But we went out to do a Muncie 70.3 preparation workout on the track, a running workout. And you had it set up. It was 100 degrees that day, I think. Sunny on a all-black track, no shade whatsoever. And we were going to run a half marathon on the track with descending splits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, we started out, and the whole thing you said was start out at a comfortable enough pace, don't look at your watch, and then check it after a mile. And then that's your starting point, and everything after that was descending down to the last mile of 13 miles. And I think within, I'm sure that I didn't nail every mile, but pretty close. And by the end, this was with, I think, 30 to 40 second, maybe a minute break to refuel in between each mile. And I think on the last mile, I found myself sprinting the last lap. And and you pushed me to see what I could do that last lap as I came around. And it was at that point when I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. I certainly was ready for the 70.3, and that was the running breakthrough, because I never ran. I think 14. I think we talk about that all the time. It was like going into that Ironman. 14 was my longest run ever. It was going into the Ironman marathon with a 14-mile run, and I'm not bragging about that. I just felt like all the preparation I had done on the shorter distances, and the way you prepped me, and the way you pushed me in different types of workouts, I just had a feeling that I could pull it off.
I think that's a huge. Yeah, there are two different camps, I think, when it comes to training. I believe I can do the distance when it matters, or I need to do the distance in training to prove to myself that I can do the distance. And the latter is usually the people that fall apart. Just because, I had this question from an athlete I just took on, and he asked, what's my longest run going to be? 2.5 hours, 3 hours? I was like, excuse me? Baking powder? What did you just say? I was like, I am never, ever, ever going to have you run that long. Period. If you run 2.5, it's more than likely going to be a split run. Hour and a half in the morning, hour in the evening, something like that, just because the total destruction it does on your body is just insane. But that's the mentality a lot of people have, is I need to prove to myself, not physically, but mentally, that I could do it. I know that there's a group that goes, and I have another athlete that did Chattanooga last year, and she'd go with a group in Knoxville, and they would do like 100-mile rides and like 13-mile run bricks afterwards. And I was like, if I catch you doing that, I'm going to kick you in the knees.
Wow.
And she would veer and not do it because it's idiotic. But those are the kind of people that have that approach that lack, in my opinion, the mental fortitude to actually do well. And that's because they feel like they need to complete it before they can compete in it. And I instilled that in you, and it's like, I need to run longer. I said, listen, man, you only got to do it once. And that's you only got to do it one time. And I think anybody can do anything once. You just have to be prepared enough to be able to, like, if I said, all right, you're a runner, and you've run 14 miles really well, and you've been real frequent, and you've done tons of training, your volume's like 13, 14, 15 hours a week. And then I was like, all right, I've loaded you up, and I've given you everything you need. You've run this on entire legs. Now I'm going to rest you for 2 weeks, and then see if you can run 26 miles. Any of them could.
Yeah.
Any of them could. Period. Without question. If you had to, you could do it. But you only got to do it once. And that's something that's, I think, very important for anybody who's listening, is that a marathon is not a prerequisite for doing an Ironman. And neither is 100 miles for a century ride for cycling. I mean, I have athletes that do it, and that's because they just love to ride. But it isn't, by all means, not a prerequisite. One of my best rides ever, my best two of my best rides ever at Arizona Louisville, were my longest ride was 80.
Yeah.
It's the belief and the trust in the months and months and months and weeks that you've put in of volume and load to know that once you're rested, you're a completely different animal and machine than you were 2 months ago in a heavy training period with no rest.
Yeah. The whole running thing with me was, I don't know. I guess the part that I mentally knew, I just knew, because after that training you did with us on the track, we went up and did Muncie, and that was my first half. And I performed pretty well up there.
Yeah, I guessed your time.
Yes, you did. That's right.
I have a knack. I have a knack for that. I'm finding. I think I have like a Yoda type sense for guesstimating times. I guessed your time down to the minute.
I know. I think it was 5:15 or something.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy.
Yeah, it was pretty creepy, and I don't know if that subconsciously, made me want to get it or what. But I don't know how I could have pulled that off. But all I remember about that run was, that was the first real triathlon I went after. I did the Olympic that I just wanted to finish and what have you. But
can we tell people something real quick?
Yeah.
If you're doing Muncie and they tell you it's a flat run course, they're lying so bad.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
Just for the record, if you're doing Muncie and you read the thing, it's like pancake flat run, lie, all lies.
Yeah, the bike is.
Yeah, the bike is.
The bike is.
Bike. All right, sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, that particular bike, that was the first time I really went after 56 miles, and I got off, and oh man, every step of that run was a grind. And it wasn't because I couldn't run a half marathon. It was because I was just not, I was just still building, right? But
yeah, we weren't. You were doing Muncie, but we were still prepping for Wisconsin.
Absolutely, and that's at somewhere around mile 7 of that day, about halfway through that half Ironman or that half marathon, I made up my decision that I wasn't going to stop. And I think that was, my mantra all year, even in training, was that there was no stopping. And, for a couple of reasons, because A, it's way harder to get going, and B, you just get in a habit of walking after that. So, I mean, to this day, so at that point when I didn't, it really hurt. I mean, like the last half of that half marathon, my feet were on fire, and they hurt like I felt like they were bleeding or whatever, and it was not a pleasant experience by any means, but getting to that finish line was the most unbelievable feeling. So that was the mental game of that. My legs were fine. My legs were plenty strong to make that happen, and I could have probably kept going, but it would have been painful. But that was the point when I was like, all right, I know I can do a full. I wasn't ready at that point, but I knew I was going the right direction, and I knew I had the mental approach going right at that point.
And after that, you're on the home stretch. I mean, you got 2 months to go.
Right.
Which is one more build, and then you get to relax for 2 weeks, and actually do a taper and recover. Most people do too much, but at that point it's and that's, I think, another thing that I want our listeners to understand is that there is, even if you have a coach, there is nobody that knows your own body better than you do.
Yeah.
And days off should be taken seriously. Recovery should be taken seriously. I tell people all the time, like, I'm much more likely to give you a day off than I am to tell you to push through. I don't even think I've honestly told anybody to push through. I think one time, and they were just whining and moaning for no reason. They were really tired, but recovery is a huge deal. And then once I think you instill that belief in yourself or within another person, is that the recovery takes on a whole new shape. You're not hurrying to gain more fitness. You're not worried about losing it. You've got it, and now it's time to mentally and emotionally prepare for the day. Really more than it is physically, because you've physically prepared. Now it's time to get your mind right. And I think that's another obstacle that people have, is that they put in so much work. They put in this whole entire year of training, and they've spent all this money, and that overwhelming stress part of it, I think, takes over people's brains, and it's like they're almost afraid to fail. So they're just so afraid to fail, it becomes comfortable for them. So if they fail, they're used to it. And going into races, people who go into tapers and over train and do things, to me, it's just more of a sign of that panic and anxiety. Is I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready. If you're not ready, you're never going to be.
Yeah.
It's you're not going to gain anything else. And and having a wide range of athletes from late 20s to 50, you can all approach it the same way. And I thought, your approach to it was, I thought you were definitely nervous and anxious, but I didn't see the any kind of stress and fear that you see in so many faces when they start a race like this.
No. In fact, I was eerily calm.
No, I was going to say that was a firm no. If I'd have shaked the 8-ball, it would have been firm no.
Well, but the days, I think the night, it's almost like, game day or game on kind of feeling for me sometimes, because I was certainly nervous the day or two before, the whole being around the scene and, the whole energy of everything. But that morning I woke up eerily calm, and that's what was like, such a relief. I don't know if I planned, what I mean? I don't know what that was, but I was very grateful to have it, because the minute I walked onto that swim start, it was kind of like, it was almost like that, that feeling like when that you're backed into a corner, and the anticipation of fear is gone. Now you got to face it. You just got to go and do what you got to do, and it left my mind. But so is it all right if I kind of tell how I mentally prepared to go sub-12 up there?
Oh, you went sub-12? I forgot about that.
Come on, man. You were happy. You were pretty proud of that.
I was super. I believed you could do it.
I got pictures of that.
Yeah. I got my fingers up 1 and 1 for 11. Yeah, I got it. Go ahead with your humble brag.
Well, it's always it's there forever. I didn't even know about that 11 thing until you did it.
It is a great story. Considering, how long you've been in the sport, and it was your first, and that. Of your senior age, that you were able to accomplish such a feat. Yeah, but what happened was, it was all a mental game I was playing with myself. After I did Muncie at around 5:15, that formula that everybody uses is sort of double your halftime and add an hour or whatever, and that became 11:30. High 11s. Yep.
Yeah, 11:30 or something for me. But so. I think I've confessed to this on camera, and it may be part of the documentary at some point, but I said something to the effect of I set my goal at sub-11. And we talk a lot about, being spiritual and letting things come to you and not put pressure on yourself or whatever like that. But I kind of like, when it comes to a race versus training, when I see that race ahead of me, I like to shoot high and land, star to moon kind of thing, So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, what's it going to take for me to get sub-11? And I'm not saying it made it easy, but it made that sub-12, much more manageable. Because, early in the year, I was hoping to go sub-13. And at some point, I thought, well, maybe I can do sub-12, so let's shoot for sub-11, but not out of control. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't gonna burn up trying to get it, but I thought if I ran the perfect pace, patient race, and everything turned out well, I could flirt with that 11-hour mark. But as it turns out, it wasn't even close. But still, I think that's what ultimately helped me get in under 12. That and seeing our famous anonymous friend CC go sub-12 a couple weeks earlier at Louisville, when we had, I'm not sure he was expecting that, but I don't, like as a newcomer, I thought sub-12 was a remarkable feat for him at that time.
He was the same way. I go, and this is a small sidetrack, then we'll get back onto your awesomeness, but he was a guy that I remember came to me in like May or June after it was May, because he had done Rev 3 in Knoxville, and it was like, do you think I can do Louisville? And I was like, yeah, I think you can do Louisville. It's like, do you think I can do well? And I was like, yeah, I think you can do well. And you've only got 3 months, and I think, and I've I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I have a lot of athletes that come to me in a pinch. Like, all right, I've signed up for this race and I'm just now training for it. I know if anybody can get me to the finish line, it's you. Ann Malin last year, like 3 months before Louisville, and then she goes and PRs about 45 minutes. And I think to an extent, that short-term focus is a huge mental benefit because you really go into a race with no expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that erases any limiters about your performance, and it allows you to race freely. And I think there's just something about that is just incredibly invaluable. But yeah, I know he was, once he did that, you were chomping at the bit to go sub-12 as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't beat him, and his story in a lot of ways may be even more impressive than mine, except he's so young. But not only that, maybe we can get him on here and talk about that Rev 3 race sometime.
Yeah, should we even talk about a race that doesn't exist anymore?
Oh, that's true, yeah. All right, we won't do it.
Yeah,
but
bring back Rev 3 Knoxville and we'll do a cast on it, if you're listening.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, again, but I think to really wrap it up here, because the bottom line with that race, going from starting to run about a year and a half earlier to finishing an Ironman, and I think my marathon time was about 4:20, which is a 10-minute pace. And again, and it's not, I just think that, like, when I saw Louisville, personally, just watched it, that's when I said to myself, man, I can do an Ironman. Even the first time. I saw it before I signed up for Ironman, but that was when I made my decision. And I always recommend to anybody that's even thinking about it is go watch one, because you'll see people just like you, looking maybe even way more out of shape than you, what have it, and they're finishing Ironmans.
Are you talking about me? Like I look out of shape?
Well, one of those years you did. No.
Man, that's tough. That's a tough crowd today.
When I saw you out there, man, I was like, wow, if he can do it.
Hey, you know what? But in all honesty, that is something that it should erase people's excuse all the time. Is I'm too young, or I'm too old, or I'm a guy and I'm a woman, or I'm too overweight, or I'm too skinny. Go out to an Ironman course and it's literally like walking into Disney World. You see every shape and every size and every age and every ethnicity, and maybe not that. We haven't gotten the sport that far enough yet, but you see, I mean, it's anybody can do it. And if you want to use that as an excuse, then wait till like mile 80 of the bike when some 60-year-old woman comes cruising past you on a road bike, sitting up, waving, being like, "Good ride, see you later."
Yeah. And
you're like, oh man, as I ride on my $8,000, Cervelo, barely able to, drink. It's a great place to fulfill your dreams. It's a great place to be humbled. It's a great place to just have overall perspective.
Yeah, it cemented it for me when I saw it. First of all, I was so jacked about it, and second of all, I thought, wow, man, I can do it. I can do it. I can't do it now, but I can get to that point. And that's exactly what happened, And when the course at Wisconsin is, we trained for it cycling wise, but still I had never really, when I got off that bike, I have to admit my legs felt like there's no way I could run a marathon at that point. I mean, I could barely even bend my knees. It was the weirdest feeling. So when I started running, again, the only thing on my mind was don't stop. And that's exactly how I got through it. And there's no other explanation. I had only ran 14 miles in my life as the longest run before that. And I just committed to running the entire marathon. I did stop for 5 to 10 seconds to get drinks at the aid stations, but other than that, I wouldn't let myself stop, and that's how I did it. Period.
Yeah, you committed to running and not committing to walking.
Yeah.
I think walking aid stations is smart. It helps loosen up all kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely going to watch one. And Wisconsin has the best spectator run course I've ever been on, but I still think Louisville has the best finish line. That's still my favorite finish line. The Louisville 4th Street Live.
Yeah.
Chattanooga's is weak sauce.
It's not bad. I mean, the thing,
compared to the other two, it's weak. For as many people as that do that race in the heart of downtown, think if they move that up to like the street. Oh, dude, it'd be bumping.
I do have to agree with you. I cannot believe that with that beautiful downtown in Chattanooga, that they cannot figure out how to get 2 or 3 blocks of that
seriously
blocked off and use it for the run. It's just amazing. It's lazy. It's cheap. It's cheap and lazy.
Hear us? It's cheap and lazy.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. Anything else you got? Anything else fun going on this week?
No. This week I'm just trying to find work. So if anybody's out there looking for video work, check my page. I am. I'm an independent contractor who just finished a film, and now I'm looking for work, man.
Yeah, you can expect a bill. I'm going to charge you through our own site for commercial and sponsorship for that little plug you just did.
Yeah, and what our next cast will be on the whole thing will be on why you should sponsor this cast. 50 minutes of reasoning.
Listen, in all honesty, if you're out there and you're an age grouper, listen to other age groupers or age group coaches about what to purchase, because this time of year you see one thing. You see professional athletes selling all the stuff they've been telling you is the greatest thing on earth because they just got a new sponsor for the next year.
Ooh.
So what does that say? It is. They'll use the same forum to promote the products that they say are the best every single day to sell same said products to go use something else. So just think about that. Plant a little seed, a little bit of a teaser. So a little brand awareness for the masses.
Okay. I like it, man.
You're welcome.
Thank you for adding that.
Hey, anytime.
All right. So after that, I guess we're finished for today.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. Been a good week. Looking forward to another awesome one.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Thanks for listening. Keep coming with the questions. We've had a ton of great questions this week via email. Don't be afraid to hit us up on Twitter either. Lock and load. Tell us about it. Give us a review on iTunes, and we will keep doing the best we can to give you good podcasts to listen to.
Yes, we will. We're committed to it. Every Monday and Thursday they come out. How's that?
Yeah, that is consistency. It's all about it. Training and podcasts, like peanut butter and jelly.
All right, man.
All right, I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, buddy. See you, man.
Bye.